opportunity for my community because they deserve it.
Order of the House, Sir Edward Leigh.
The benefit bill is now unsustainable in this country. And really the main purpose of what I want to say today is that I hope that we could try and create some sort of consensus in the House to try and deal with this problem, which is imposing a massive level of debt on families. Now, I'm absolutely sure that the government accepts that this burden is unsustainable, and I'm absolutely certain that if they would come to the House with sensible proposals to try and get people off benefit, Her Majesty's loyal opposition would support the government in that endeavour. The government ducked the challenge early in the year to cut benefits and to try and thereby encourage more people into work. We said at the time that we were prepared to support the government to try and deliver these cuts, and I'm sure that the opposition front bench would repeat that promise. Naturally, yeah.
I thank the honourable gentleman for giving way. I just want to clarify that he's perfectly happy for children to continue to live in child poverty while we try to reform the welfare benefit system. Is that right?
Actually making that point because what we were discussing earlier in the year were people who were seeking work, and we were trying to encourage people to get back into work. I think the problem that I can understand the political imperative of what the Chancellor has done today to sustain her own position with her own backbenchers, but the problem is that you're going to create a perverse incentive for people on benefit with larger families to stay out of work, and I'm not sure that's good for their morale, good for the economy, good for anybody. So I think it seems a very easy hit for the Chancellor today, but I think there are going to be perverse results. I just want to also say a word about representing a rural constituency of the family farm tax. The budget's extension of inheritance tax to businesses assets over £1 million has imposed, as we know, a major new burden on long-established family farms in my constituency and elsewhere. Now, I can quite understand if the government was seeking to target larger estates, target people who were acquiring estates to avoid inheritance tax. But this new family farm tax affects not just large landed estates, but ordinary farms worked by generations of the same families. And I was actually visiting quite recently a tenant farmer in my own constituency. And this actually affects him because his tenancy, he doesn't own the land, it's only a tenancy, but the tenancy is a capital asset and he will be taxed on it, maybe as much as £300,000, which affects the ability of the family to stay in farming. Many family farmers, as we know, lack liquid assets. They're forcing them to hold cash back, restructure, borrow, or consider selling part of the business. Because the dividends used to pay inheritance tax are themselves taxed, these family farms, face an effective tax rate of about 33%. Now, the measure affects a significant share of medium-sized, long-standing firms, even though it raises less than £500 million annually. This achieves maximum social and economic destruction for minimal financial reward. The policy discourages business growth because expanding a family firm increases future tax liabilities on heirs. Now, some advisers are recommending owners sell businesses outright to avoid in future tax complications. A climate of unpredictable tax changes creates fear amongst owners and undermines long-term planning. The uncertainty over succession planning is freezing investment and expansion across affected businesses. So the arguments can be repeated, but I do appeal to the government to try and listen to the National Farmers Union, which has come up with some very sensible compromises which would keep family farms in business and would achieve the government's objective. Let me say a bit about the benefits bill. 4 million universal credit claimants are now excused from even looking for a job. 4 million, I repeat, universal credit claimants are now excused from even looking for a job. This is a disaster in terms of self-reliance, in terms of the economy and much else. Now, numbers, we know, have grown sharply since the pandemic. A surge in reported illnesses, particularly mental health conditions, is the main driver. 2/3 of recent work capability assessments cite mental or behavioural disorders. My right honourable friend, the member for Chingford, has blamed the collapse in the assessment process for the rise in successful claims. Remote and paper-based assessments introduced during COVID have weakened checks on eligibility. This again is something that we could cooperate across the House. It's not just a question of cutting benefits, it's also a question of summoning people in, helping them, giving them confidence to try and get back into the workplace. And unless we do that, and also tackle perverse incentives in the whole benefit system, which discourage people from working, then we are going to fail as a nation. Yes.
Grateful, because I like drilling into the data and getting into the facts. And if you see the correlation between the rise in people who are claiming social security and the rise in waiting lists in the NHS, they map identically through all parliaments, Tory and Labour, and therefore will you look at the data before making assumptions, and getting the waiting list down has got to be our objective.
Order. The member used the term "you" twice. Maybe focusing and looking at the chair will stop colleagues referring to language "you" twice. Sir Edward Leigh.
I'm very careful, actually, to look at the data and constantly refer to facts which are accepted by the OBR and by the government. These facts are not challenged. That 300,000 people are currently waiting to undergo a work capability assessment. We need emergency measures to clear this backlog. The lack of in-person assessments, and I'm surprised that anybody could disagree with what I'm saying, has created a feedback loop where dependency grows, and work expectations diminish. The longer this is allowed to continue, the harder it becomes for people to reintegrate into society. This is a system that writes people off rather than helping them back into employment. And I would have thought we could all agree on that. We must not abandon these people. This is about human dignity. Getting people off long-term benefits and into employment brings significant mental health benefits. It also helps our straitened finances. The cost of sickness and disability benefits is projected to reach £100 billion annually by the end of the decade. Now, some households receive more than £30,000 a year in universal credit alone, with disability benefits payments pushing support well above that. The current system is financially incentivised individuals to demonstrate incapacity rather than engage with work. The government has redeployed, I agree, work coaches to re-engage long-term inactive claimants, but systematic incentives remain unchanged. Failure to tackle long-term benefit dependency impoverishes the nation by increasing fiscal burdens and reducing labour force participation. Now, the Office for Budget Responsibility reports the working age incapacity benefit caseload reached 7% in 2023-24 and is forecast to hit 7.9% by 2028-29. We must stop paying full benefits to young people who are neither working nor studying. These young people should be working or studying. I'll make some progress, if I may. The Centre for Policy Social Justice estimates that by 2026 there will be a gap of over £2,500 between earnings and combined benefit income for under 25s. So I could go on making these arguments, but I'll just proceed to the next part of my speech on immigration. I accept that the greatest failure of our last government was immigration. The 21 to 2024 Boris wave, and I admit it, and I apologise on behalf of my government, allowed... I don't know why shouldn't I apologise? Why shouldn't I be honest? Allowed well over 4 million non-UK migrants into the country. Many of these will soon qualify for indefinite leave to remain. ILR grants access to benefits and public services on the same basis as citizens is destroying financial incentives. The scale of this is financially significant. Now, the Home Secretary, I agree, has announced some sensible moves, and I supported her when she came to the House. For example, extending the standard qualifying period for ILR from 5 years to 10 years. As Carl Williams of the Centre for Policy Studies notes, policymakers cannot say with confidence how many migrants currently hold ILR or their economic circumstances. Experimental DWP data shows around 211,000 ILR holders receive universal credit. This is completely unsustainable. If Migration Observatory estimates are correct, between 27% and 37% of ILR holders receive universal credit. So this is a worrying problem and needs resolution. Next, increasing tax. I've long argued for a much simpler tax system, close loopholes but keep taxes low, especially for married families. Corporate tax complexity creates an inherent bias towards huge multinationals. They can hire departments of accountants to reduce their liabilities. A free market relies on everyone paying their fair share. We need creative ways of ensuring companies like Amazon and Starbucks can operate freely, we all use them, while paying a fair contribution. Then we can help lighten the burden on family farms, working people and small firms. Increasing taxes on working people risks undermining growth by reducing take-home pay and incentives. ONS figures show direct taxes reduced income inequality by only 4.4 percentage points, limited redistribution for a heavy burden. Higher taxes on the wealthy simply encourage them to leave. Data from the Henley and Partners 2025 migration report suggests the UK may lose 16,500 millionaires this year. What's the point of it? Why are we driving these wealth creators out of the country? So I'll just finish with your... there's so much to say, Madam Deputy Speaker, but I know that I'll weary the House if I go on too long. Can I just end by one point? It's quite controversial and it's quite difficult to say this. The triple lock, and I know I'm going to get into trouble for saying this, but I've got to say the truth as I believe it. We all know that the triple lock is unsustainable. It is you cannot have a situation where people of my generation are consuming an ever greater proportion of national wealth through the state pension. Frankly, our government never dared tackle it, having it brought it in because they knew that the Labour Party would crucify them in the ballot box. Now the Labour Party is caught in the same bind. The fact is, it is completely unfair on younger people if the burden of older people through the triple lock increases year by year. We laugh at the French because of their failure to actually achieve sensible pension reform. But we ourselves have got to have the courage, frankly, to end the triple lock. And I think this will only be done with consensus between the two parties. And I'm absolutely sure that if the government was to come to the lead of the opposition and say that this is unsustainable and will you share this burden with you, which may seem to be very unpopular, but actually no, many older people of my generation, we all have children, we all have grandchildren, we all see our own children struggling to get on the housing market. So many, I think that actually if government and opposition were prepared to have the courage to deal with the triple lock, I'm not sure it would be as unpopular with older people as is sometimes maintained. And after all, we could always relieve the burden on those on pension credit. We could find ways of helping people who really couldn't afford to live. But the triple lock must go. It's not a popular policy, but I think in our hearts we know it's the right policy.
We have shy of 60 members trying to contribute, so there was a